I spent the last 20 years in advertising and technology, and through a almost 40-year journey, I realized the universe did not want me to do that anymore, even though I was so good at it and I was so passionate about it. But I've known since I was a little girl that I had a story to share, and I didn't know quite how crazy the story was going to get or how it was all going to unfold, but I knew that my story would eventually help people.
Okay. Oh, hi, everybody. Gee, well, that's weird. All right. Welcome back.
Just go with it.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna.
Nobody cares. I
talk.
like what you said in
Just
the
go with
last
it.
one.
Yeah.
You were
I hate it.
talking to
What did I even do?
the woman from the UK, and you were like, I'm not really good at cutting, so this is what it is, and this is part of our journey. And I was like, I love that about you.
Yeah. I mean, I am so brand new to this whole thing that every time I try to be like Mr. Podcast Guy, it sucks. And then when I'm just me,
honestly,
it's way
yeah,
better.
just be
So
you. And by the way,
just
you're
gonna be
doing
me.
great as Mr. Podcast Guy. Like, I'm in awe of it. So I'm learning from you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Lauren. That's really kind of you. So, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Willpower Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Today, I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Lauren Friedman.
Great. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Lauren. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. I'm very happy that you're here. So, Lauren, sent me your a little information about yourself, and there were so many things there that I was like, "What? That? I don't understand what that is," and all these cool abbreviations and things like that I was really confused on, but also very intrigued. So, Lauren, my first question that I just kind of want to throw out there is, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you
Tell
so
the
much.
people
And
who you
by the
are.
way, like, that's part of my charm is I like to baffle people with brilliance and just confuse them enough that they want to learn a little bit more. So I'm Lauren Friedman. I'm actually going as the Lauren Friedman Experience because I am an experience. And I spent the last 20 years in advertising and technology, and through a almost 40-year journey, I realized that the universe did not want me to do that anymore, even though I was so good at it and I was so passionate about it. But I've known since I was a little girl that I had a story to share, like since I was under 10 years old. And I didn't know quite how crazy the story was going to get or how it was all going to unfold, but I knew that my story would eventually help people when I eventually did share it. So I've been through this insane healing trauma journey that took me almost 40 years. And basically, the high level is I've had dysfunction in my family life since I was born, in my marriage, because trauma seeps into everything, in my career, and was very prolific and volatile. With the backdrop of trying to figure out what's going on in my body, I've been having somatic responses to trauma since I was under 2 years old. But because nobody understood the mind-body connection and actually how trauma works outside of the battlefield, this was only solved in 2021 by a girl that went to my gym that I became friends with, who's a doctor. And actually, the crazy thing is that her dad also committed suicide while we were friends, and she had come to me for support and before she had even become my doctor. So I do believe that I'm being guided by suicide spirit guides as part of this journey. It sounds all hokey, but in any 12-step program, in any recovery program, in any healing journey, you need to find a higher power. And through all of this, I've been able to find a higher power in spirituality, and it's actually helped me on my sobriety spectrum journey because, much like a lot of your community, I also realized through becoming sober that my issue is actually sex and love. And not a lot of people are talking about it in the way that I'm speaking about it. And that's part of what I want to share with others so that others feel comfortable enough to not only recognize it in themselves, but also figure out ways out. Because I've seen a lot of people on your show say this, but also like I've said it before myself, there is a way out, that you don't have to live like this forever. So I just think it's really beautiful when I have the opportunity to speak to people and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel the same way. What do I do? And my goal is to provide resources, community connection through a community as well as through storytelling.
Wow. Quite the intro right there, Lauren. That's beautiful. Can we back up? Can you go? I mean, you have a very impressive resume. I was going over it. I was like, you've done everything. I mean, this is amazing what you've done in the levels that you've reached.
Yeah, that's
is remarkable. Like, what was your childhood kind of like? You know, what can you walk me through? You know,
so it's crazy. So both my parents were therapists. They met in grad school, and my dad was really unwell, and he had multiple suicide attempts throughout my life. And the first one was when I was 5, and I remember it. But That's actually the least of my problems at this point, sadly. I've actually been experiencing disordered eating at under 2 years old. I was throwing up from eating. So, but at the same time that I was being told that I was doing this around 2, I also have this insane memory that most people with this level of trauma, which I never considered that I had until recently. I knew my life was crazy, but I didn't consider it to be trauma because most people didn't understand that trauma wasn't just the battlefield type of trauma. It's literally every single thing that happens on a consistent basis every single day. That's what complex trauma is. So what I'm talking about here is the complex trauma that leads to these attachment issues, that leads to these addictions. So when I was told that I was throwing up, at 2 years old, as soon as I could have a conversation, I was told that I was throwing up and I was ashamed to the family because I was throwing up in front of their friends. But I also was told at the same time that I was brilliant and that I was asking really insightful questions and I was saving myself. Like my mom lost me in a crowd before I could even say my name. And not only did I find myself, because I wasn't lost, she just couldn't find me. But not only could I find myself, but I also gave myself my own nickname. So it's really confusing when you grow up thinking, you're shameful to the family because of your body and your eating habits, but then you're also brilliant. It's a weird juxtaposition. And as my life unfolded, I realized why I had these really, really, really bad coping mechanisms. And a lot of them stem from attachment issues. I realized through my healing trauma journey why I was getting myself into these types of really bad sex and love situations and how bad it made me feel. And I've actually been able to connect it to what actually ended up being my abusive mom. I never considered her to be abusive because she never hit me. But as it turns out, through therapy and through all of this healing journey, I've learned that emotional abuse is actually the same as physical abuse. Your body can't distinguish it. So recently I was having a triggered moment in a trauma workshop, and somebody that I'd become friends with went to touch me in a very non-safe way. And I was like, please don't touch me. And I was really upset by that because I've never been physically abused. And I went back to my therapist, and I was never sexually abused, thankfully. And I went back to my therapist and I told her, and she's like, well, your body feels that you were abused. And I've always reacted like that. Like when my mom and then eventually my husband, after a major situation happened, when they went to go hug me, I would step back. And that's literally from feeling violated. And emotional abuse is just as bad as physical abuse, and your body internalizes it because it can't distinguish between the mind and body. It's all connected. So my childhood was really, really volatile. And as I've learned, though, I've been really, really successful because I was in survival mode my whole life and nobody knew it. I literally had a 39-year stomach ache, but because trauma takes you out of your body, I was so disconnected from myself that I had no idea what was going on in my own body, which is crazy because I have the ability to connect with so many different people, and that's part of survival mode too. So I'm calling it survival mode is my superpower. I have all of these different ways and slogans to explain it. And there's a yeah.
You keep mentioning complex trauma. What does that? What does
So
that mean?
complex trauma is basically a series of events that are interpersonal in nature that happen repeatedly over an extended period of time. Most of the time, it is attributed to childhood, but it can also happen in adulthood. So everybody is walking around with some level of complex trauma and they don't know it. And the word trauma is really something that people try to back away from, or they're like, is it big T or little t? And then they're like, well, I haven't been through what you've been through, so I shouldn't feel this way. And the thing is, it's not a competition. I don't want to ever have a competition because I'm going to win a lot of the time. And I don't want to win that competition. I want people to feel that, their experiences are valid and they have the ability to heal from them as well. It doesn't matter what it was or how big or small you might think it is, because your body and mind are internalizing it and you need to get it out of your body. So complex trauma is something that lives inside you and it keeps building upon itself basically over and over again until you basically stop that cycle. And it's so hard, but it's so beautiful.
I feel like I've been dealing with complex trauma my whole life. I mean, you know, my story is crazy. I mean, I was living this double life of this, I'm a teacher, I'm doing all these right things, I'm going to college, I'm doing all the one, I'm being a good son, I'm being a good brother, I'm doing all the things that on paper look good, right? But deep down, I'm struggling so badly, and I'm trying to find excuses or out of it, by abusing.
Yeah, no, that's
alcohol,
literally what
right?
it is, though.
So,
And that's why there's so many addictions in this country and around the world because of that exact thing. And like you, my life looked perfect on paper, but if you really looked under the hood or you just spoke to me, you knew shit was fucked up. So it was just like you,
Yeah.
like I had to have those really serious things happen. Like in the summer of 21, before I was being properly treated for or diagnosed with this, I was having flashbacks and I was wetting the bed and I was having brain fog and I was interviewing at Amazon and Google and my brain wasn't working. And that's like all the places that I've always interviewed at that I've had really good responses from. And it was terrifying. And I never thought that I've never been suicidal, but in those moments, I thought that I was never gonna be able to leave my sofa again. And I thought that like, yeah,
So I'm sorry to cut you off. So you were going through these interviews, and then all of a sudden your brain like all of a sudden went into
it
like
was
a
in,
survival
I
mode
was in
kind of thing.
survival
Like
mode. So what
what
happened
happened?
is so when you're in a prolonged state of survival mode, of dysregulation, it's basically about nervous system regulation. And the reason like that, what you're saying about complex trauma and your life and how you went to alcohol, it's all about nervous system regulation and dysregulation. So when you're dysregulated, you have those urges, you have those types of trauma responses that are really, really hard to manage because you're not in tune with your body and your mind and body are feeling chaotic. So because I was in such a prolonged level of survival mode, like I must have been activated in utero. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with Gabor Mate, but yeah, I actually, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And
I actually was just at a
that's
workshop a few weeks ago because I'm getting certified in trauma in a few different ways. And I was at a somatic experiencing workshop and he was one of the main presenters.
love the way he speaks. He has like a very slow,
He's,
distinct, and he has that accent too. So it's very particular, and it's like it
no, he's
draws you in,
amazing.
right? Yeah. He's everything he says, every word he has, it has like a punch to it, and it's
No, I couldn't agree
very
more.
subtle.
But what he says,
Yeah.
how he says it and
Yeah.
how he speaks and how he thinks is absolutely beautiful. Like I agree with you. And he's actually going to be in Boston this, I believe soon. So I should say, yeah. But he basically
Yeah.
was talking about like, he says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. And that's ultimately at the bottom of everything is every type of addiction, whether it's sex, alcohol, drugs, work. I mean, literally every single thing is an addiction. So when you start to look at things through the lens of trauma, you realize, oh my gosh, these are all the unhealthy coping mechanisms that either, that were once really good about getting you through, that once helped you get through those situations, but they eventually become harmful as you use them over and over and over again. So like when you're in a prolonged period of survival mode, it disrupts your hormones, it disrupts every single part of your body. And it actually, like, one of the reasons that this country is so obese outside the scope of food and all of, lifestyle, it's also about stress and it's about prolonged, extreme, chronic stress. So it's all interrelated. So the reason that, like, when I was going on these interviews, because I'd been in survival mode for so long, my body actually was like drained of like these hormones. So at one point in 2016, they thought that I had a tumor in my adrenal gland. And when I didn't, they were like, I went to an endocrinologist and he just told me to get to a better BMI, which is like an antiquated measurement of health. And at that point, I'd already lost over 115 pounds, which yeah, I've lost and gained. Wait, I've lost and
You're,
gained over 100 pounds multiple times just since 2013 alone from trauma living in my body. So this is what actually started this whole
wow.
journey for me because my whole life I was surrounded by everybody in my family who was really unwell, but I wasn't. And everybody also really functioned at a very high level though.
Many people were in your family? How many
I have a
do you have
sibling.
siblings?
I'm not including her as part of that just for to keep her. But my dad and mom they both come from really, really dysfunctional, like really dysfunctional families. My dad grew up in the projects in Eastern New York on welfare. He was so unwell, but he was as brilliant as he was unwell, and he actually got into Harvard on a dare. He didn't go, but he got. I know. I don't know. Someone was
How do
like,
you
you
get into
should
Harvard on a
apply. And
dare?
he was like, okay. So he did. I know that this is what nerds do. That I'm a nerd too. But he also grew up and he never met his father. His father was hospitalized the day he was born in a mental institution. It never came out. He grew up with an uncle who was speaking to the cockroaches on the wall of the apartment where they lived, who eventually drowned himself in the East River. So that's one side of the family. The other side of the family, my mom was first generation here. Her mother escaped the Holocaust like 5 years before my mom was born, maybe less than that. So as you can imagine, that's a level of stress, chronic stress, and complex trauma just before, without even introducing me into this picture, right? My mom was beaten as a child. So she, then thought because I don't beat my children, I'm a good parent, right? So these people have unresolved complex trauma that's generational. They then have me, and my nervous system becomes dysregulated just from existing, just from being in that environment. And I've actually been able to
Yeah.
figure out one of the reasons that I was activated at such a young age through, because the universe is always on time, but your hormones are all messed up. So that's one of the reasons why the Ozempics of the world actually work, because they regulate your blood sugar. So when your hormones are all messed up for a prolonged period of time, it actually sends your blood sugar through the roof. That's why there's this obesity problem. It sends signals to your brain that you're hungry. It just dysregulates everything. So eventually I was in adrenal fatigue, which isn't a medically recognized diagnosis, and which is so hard to figure out when you're not working with the doctors that recognize it, right? And it affected my thyroid, and it made me feel like I was full of brain fog. It was so scary. I mean, I still to this day, like, I'm still going through things that I have to learn how to drive again. I've never had an accident. Like, I've had crazy things happen while I was driving, but I've never actually had an accident. So
I was gonna say, has your personality is like fascinating because you're just so much, and like I love it. It's like,
thank you.
I'm just drawn into you because everything you're saying is like, oh my God, like she's clicking on so many different cylinders right now that
Sorry.
it's almost hard to keep up with you. But every single thing that no,
Thank you.
please keep being you, because it's very very unique in the most wonderful way
That's kind
possible.
of it.
So, did it ever this personality that you have, when you get in trouble because of it, as far as like legal things, or has it always been like you're just very interestingly complicated in the best way possible?
Good
And then just
question.
wonder if you
Yeah.
ever
So
kind of had some.
the great thing
Yeah.
is I've actually never, knock wood, had any real legal issues. I was arrested for being in a liquor store when I was 20 years old. I was about to be 21. But it was a misdemeanor
Yeah,
in the
whatever.
state of Delaware, where I went to University of Delaware. So that just caused a lot of problems with my mom eventually, who like she was really abusive, and she made my life even harder during a really hard time. But aside from that, no, luckily, like, the thing is I've been really successful, to your point. And not only to
Right.
the point where, like, I've been in therapy since I was 5. Nobody knew what was going on because I was masking it, because I grew up in this dysfunction and we were just trying to survive. Like, I was talking to my doctor, who I've known now for like almost 6 years, and she like actually saw the generation of this. Before she was my friend, before she was my doctor, I went to a different gym, and because I was in tunnel vision, I didn't know a lot of people, but people knew me. They would see me in the gym, and I was telling her something recently about my sex and love journey and my addiction journey, and she looked at me, and I was trying to explain like what that one like thing that made me realize in that moment why I was so attracted to these types of really volatile like situations that eventually made me feel bad. And she looked at me, and she knows my whole social history. She knows about my background, but there's still so much. And she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Like, she didn't know that my mom was really abusive, because I don't talk about that, because, you really can't talk that. Those aren't things that people talk about. And, people know it. If they know me, they know we've had a really volatile relationship. Both my parents aren't alive anymore, thank God. My dad did eventually commit suicide in 2014, which honestly, I'd known since I was a little girl, this was his only way out. And I'd come to terms with it for a long time. When you think about living in survival mode and prolonged hypervigilance, then you're like, oh, that makes sense. When you're always expecting your dad to kill himself, how wouldn't you live like that? Because you just don't know how or when or how you're going to be told. He was estranged for like 9 years before this. The big story I used to have, which you'll have to tune into my podcast when I launch eventually, and you'll have to join as a guest. But I used to have a big story that he left in the middle of my college graduation, and I never saw him again. And it was like in that moment, which I now know is a disassociation, I remember thinking, I was in my cap and gown. I remember thinking, this is going to be the first scene of my movie. So I've been planning this since I was a little girl. I've been passively but actively also figuring out like how I was going to help people with this. I've been sharing my story for years. My weight loss story is something that people have been obsessed with. Like, because I've lost and gained over 100 pounds multiple times, not from lifestyle, from trauma living in my body. I've been through all of these weight loss journeys more than anybody. And people have always been like so engaged, but also inspired by this. So when you ask like if it's gotten me in trouble, not really. Thank God. My mouth has gotten me in trouble sometimes. But aside from that, not really. Because I really like, also I've been saving myself and everybody around me since I was a little girl. And that extended into adulthood, which, those same survival mechanisms that work, eventually don't work, and your body builds up tolerances and they start becoming a hindrance to your life, like alcohol, like sex and love, all of those things. So through healing complex trauma, yeah.
Yeah. Did you say you lost and you put it
So
back
I've
on? You
lost.
lost like 100 pounds,
So
like back and
it never
forth?
made sense why why I was fat. It just didn't, because I never knew I had a body. I knew I was at war with my body, but I never knew I had it. So when I was told in 2022 at a trauma workshop that was 6 days for therapy, that I had to be in my body, I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, how do I be in my body? And literally, I remember thinking, like, I don't even know I have a body. Like, I know that I'm at war with it. So I've been on a diet since I was a child. Like, I've actually been able to I've done A/B tests with my own body, like, over the years. And I'm really good at eliminating things. I'm really, really self-disciplined, because when you grow up with those voices in your head, like, not schizophrenic voices, but the voices from your mom saying you're an embarrassment to the family because of how you eat and how you look and all of those things, it lives inside you and it affects every part of your life. So I've been really successful in spite of that. Right. But I did in 2013, I had like an aha moment through a series of events that actually has to do with Pearl Jam, believe it or not. And eventually I know when I
One of
first
my favorite
connected with
bands.
you had me too. So I'm actually
You
going to
better,
be
the
starting
best.
there's a few things, but I'm starting a nonprofit that's going to be called the Why Go Foundation. Maybe someday another child won't feel as alone. And I'm going to need Eddie Vedder's approval. And I know that he will want to be involved with this just because of who he is, what they do as a band, what his backstory is, also the EB Foundation, it all works, right? So that's something that I feel confident in, once he approves that, I'll continue to use those things. Through a Pearl Jam song in 2012, it set off a series of events that was meant to be. And I realized I'm focusing on myself. I realized my job wasn't working for various reasons. In 2013, my marriage wasn't working. So I started losing weight, and I started with 3 hours a week of just like a boot camp. And like, I gave up dairy. I started doing tests with my body, like just on my own, A/B tests, because I'm very scientific. I sold technology for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? I mean, when I was looking at the bio, though, I couldn't believe it. Like, so you were in ad tech for 20 years.
I was.
Well, what drew you to ad? Like, what was advertising that you were so? I mean, I could see how your brain works now. Like, I'm getting to know you a little bit better, and I can see like you see on like a almost like your scale of perspective of world is like almost different than everybody else's. It seems like definitely different from mine. So it must have served you well.
That's so kind of you to say. That's
space.
really, I mean, it's funny. I do think differently than a lot of people. I also was raised by like someone that was so unwell, but so brilliant that he taught me so much that's what I'm also bringing to all of this in his honor. That's why it's called the Howard Healing Revolution. It's an homage to my dad, Howard, and like a nod to my mom, Elaine. Yeah, it's all going to be explained once again, my website launched in the next few weeks. But basically, I always had like a proclivity for words. I'm a word wizard. I've been reading, like, when you're trying to escape chaos in your house, a lot of people with complex trauma end up being really avid readers, right? Because they're always trying to find a way to escape whatever's happening in that moment. And my parents were also like old hippies. So I was only like allowed to watch Sesame Street as a kid. The way parents parent now is how my mom parented then. So like limited screen time. We didn't have cable, all natural baby food, like all the things that made me really uncool as a kid would make me so cool right now. I have like 3 folders for my birthday with raisins.
You'd be very hip.
Yeah, I know.
2024.
But my mom was like ahead of her time. And basically, I was really good at like slogans. Thank you. I was really good at slogans as a child. And I like worked with like party planners to do the bar and bat mitzvahs in our neighborhoods. I worked with different friends. I helped my mom like do slogans for her friends, bar and bat mitzvahs for my sisters. So I was really good at it. I knew I wanted to go into advertising, but I thought that I was going to go into copywriting. And as it turns out, my career trajectory just took me into technology first, because I actually was like self-sabotaging those interviews unintentionally, the summer after college, after I had that major trauma happen in the middle of my college graduation. So now we understand, right? But it was for the best, because technology ended up driving the whole world. So because I had that background in technology, when I eventually did get into advertising, it was so easy for me to understand. And so I've actually been able to, this is what's beautiful, I'm calling myself the trauma translator for speaking engagements. And basically I've been able to use my vast different way my brain works and my weight loss to explain data fidelity and quality across varying levels of understanding and making it palatable. So now that's kind of what I'm doing with trauma across varying levels of understanding, is helping people understand how it pertains to them. Because when I first, like, I've been in therapy since I was 5. My parents, the DSM-4 was like the Bible in our house, and we were Jewish. They would like throw around like crazy like diagnoses at each other. Like I said the word perseverate during my first therapy session, and my therapist was like, "What?"
Oh, you were getting read like
Oh,
Freud at
yeah,
bedtime and
sometimes,
stuff.
yeah. It was. I mean, that was just like how that was just how it was in my house, and so the crazy thing is, though, nobody understood what was happening. They knew that I had a weight problem, and I always felt that like my weight was like my plight in life. And actually, it turns out it's part of my soul's journey. This is part of my purpose. Like my dad planted, if you want to have your mind blown, my dad planted in my head at under 10. Like I remember we were driving, and he was like, our souls choose our families before we're born. And I remember thinking in that moment, and I might have even said it out loud, like, why would he have chosen his family? He had such a hard life. And by comparison, I thought I was great. I had two parents. I lived in a really safe neighborhood. I got to go to good schools. Like, did my parents have everything that they could buy us? No, but did I ever want for anything? No, like if I really wanted something, I had to buy it myself. Like, and I had to work for it. And like, I was grateful for those values. Like they had really good values. They just were so unwell that the way in which they led our family and themselves just ended up being so toxic. And they didn't mean to do that. That's the thing, is nobody is intentionally abusing their children. This is all about generational complex trauma that lives inside you. And these coping mechanisms and just the way people react just continue and spiral and compound each other when they're not addressed. So when my dad said that to me, I remember thinking in that moment, okay, like then why would I have chosen this family? Because at that same time, I was being bullied at school.
He said that. When did he tell you? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of Eastern kind of
Yeah.
attachment to that, which is a
Yeah. No, you're
interesting
right.
word to use in there. But and he was kind of giving you this information, this download of Eastern mysticism
I was like
at what
probably
age?
8 or
How old were
9.
you?
And like,
And were you able to comprehend these like big philosophical kind of
I mean,
ideas
I
that
don't
he was
know.
throwing at you
I mean,
at that age?
I was asking thought provoking questions about music at under 2 years old. Like I asked, what did a song mean? Like an adult song. So I don't know. I remember just thinking about it. And around that same time, he also told me that he'd gone to a psychic because he was always trying to heal himself, right? Because he knew that he needed to find healing. So he was always exploring different religions. He was always exploring different healing modalities, things that people are doing now. But back then they were viewed as hokey and they didn't work because he had such, like, he wasn't really addressing the trauma and he was so unwell and had such deep-seated psychiatric issues. Like I didn't even tell you the beginning of his life. Like his life has been really hard and he was able to overcome all of that. And it was it was also really beautiful for me to see both my parents work so hard despite all of their hardships. And they always tried so hard. Like they never did anything for themselves. They always tried to give us the best education, everything, so we could stand on our own and provide for ourselves. And I've always been really grateful for that because, but he told me that. And then at the same time, he told me like around the same, might have been the same conversation. He told me that he had gone to a psychic and the psychic told him that I was going to be a diplomat. And as I started looking back through the lens of trauma at my life over the last few years, I realized that not only was I the diplomat in my family my whole life, I was inserting myself and breaking up fights between my parents at under 10 years old. I was, the diplomat solving those types of disputes between my sibling and my mom and whatever that was. I tried to reconnect people over the years, like overextending myself beyond my capacity and things that really I shouldn't have been a part of because I was always trying to be the peacekeeper, which is an adult child of a dysfunctional family role. And that's where
I was, yeah, that was me too. I was always trying to be the piece. I was like the glue of keep everything together when things were,
well, that's exactly
not
why
going well
you've been so
in my family
successful
too.
too on yourself because you have this picture perfect view of life, right? That's literally what the archetype of that character is someone that's trying to keep this all together. And on the outside, you would never know what's going on until you ask one wrong question and you could just get a landslide of things. But basically, he told me that. And then as this all came together, I was like, also, as a diplomat in my career, I've been able to talk to all different people and, and in these ways that, and assuage concerns of things that go wrong. I never saw myself as that. I've had male coworkers actually say to me, wow, you have you're able to build these connections so quickly, or you have such a way with words that like, even if you're delivering, thank
You're so
you.
magnetic. You're magnetic
Thank
in the
you.
most
That's so
interesting way
kind. I mean,
possible. So yeah, I could listen to you talk for just have a channel of just you just talking on a live stream for, whatever, however many
I
hours, and people
appreciate
would
that. I
tune in,
actually might
swear to
need your
God.
help standing it up because that's ultimately one of the reasons why I've had a best friend since I was 3 years old. She and I couldn't be more different, like on the outside, but on, deep down, we're really like very, very similar. And she's been encouraging me for years to leverage, the Lauren Friedman experience. And I get told that a lot. People are like, you just need to go on YouTube and speak or whatever. As this all unfolded in my, in 2023, I got laid off 5 days before my 40th birthday. And I only mentioned that. I would have never mentioned my age, but you have to share it when we talk about a 39-year stomach ache. 5 days before my 40th birthday, for the sixth time, that I was interviewing internally and externally, and I started having those same somatic responses to trauma that I now know are things I'm not supposed to be doing. So I was like, well, if I'm supposed to listen to my body in one part of my life, then I have to listen to it throughout the rest. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. And I have these because of my brain works differently, right? I also attribute it to hypervigilance, but Dr. Bessel, he didn't necessarily, he says I have to live another 200 years to validate that assertion, but you never know. Yeah,
you say
sorry.
You keep saying
Those are physical responses.
Pardon
yes,
my physical response.
I'm actually going to be, I'm really sorry about that. I actually need to, I'm going to be having I'm calling it a dysfunction junction dictionary on my website with all those terms. And I do need to explain that further because I should have said that. But yes, so it's a physical response. So a physical response could be anything. A physical response is anxiety. A physical response is a migraine. A physical response is a stomach ache. But if trauma takes you out of your body and into your head, so when you're so removed from your body and so disconnected, you have no ability to feel any of those things, and your body's communicating with you that these situations aren't safe. These situations aren't good for you. And the thing is that when you have this level of complex trauma, like you have, like I have, sometimes situations that are safe seem unsafe, and vice versa. So you have to really be able to get, into your body, into your authentic self, know what your goals are in life and who you are, and what your deep-seated beliefs that you used to believe that now you don't have to believe anymore. That like now with the lens of trauma, you're like, hey, I'm not a piece of shit. I don't have so low self-esteem, like the Offspring song. So that song I used to feel like was like me, like literally in a sexual engagement, like, okay. And now when I listen to that song, because your brain hears every single thing you say to your mind and body, I tell myself, I'm like, I do have self-esteem now because I don't want even my body thinking for a moment that this is what's still happening. And like, I've had to learn to do everything over differently with gentleness. I was full of rage. I thought my rage motivated me. I thought it inspired me. I thought it made me successful. I was hired like on the spot after a few rounds of interviews, but a CEO looked at my bloody knuckles after a really, I know, I was hiding it under the table, but then he said he got hurt at the gym, and I'm like, me too. And I took my hand out from under the table, and he's like, oh, anger motivates you. You're hired. So I thought that anger motivated me.
So that's how you get those jobs. That's how you get those jobs. You get maybe punch a wall before you walk into an interview. I was really brought out though. I scaled up to 14 hours a week of CrossFit at one point just to get my body to respond. Also, by the way, when I was fat, everyone told me that, oh, you're not ready or you don't have the right look before. And when I lost weight, my career skyrocketed. So I have all of these stories. I know, but I was born to tell this story. Yeah. Can we go back to the? Sure. Can we go back to, you were going to get to a really interesting point where you said you almost got, you almost got fired.
I didn't get
fired like 5 days up. You said
I got laid off with my whole team. So sorry, I should have said, so I got laid off for the sixth time since September of 2011 because the industry, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the industry is really volatile between macroeconomic climates, all regulatory things. It's a really volatile industry. It was, this is what happens all the time. But I realized that I'm so good at my job, and everyone's like, you're so good at your job. You're so passionate. Like I was able to, while I was at the height of my dysfunction, I was able to secure a job at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And not only did I do that, but I got there and I joined the Women's Leadership Organization on a board committee. I started doing mentorship, both formally and informally, internally, externally. I did all these different things because I'm used to functioning at such a high level. People, and luckily I wasn't in an office. None of my clothes fit at that point. I gained 61 pounds while working out 14 hours a week from trauma living in my body. And I have all these different ways to explain it. But basically, I knew I didn't feel well. And I was so grateful when I had the opportunity to meet with my doctor, who is a concierge integrative physician. And actually, her practice was one of the leaders in hormone balance and semaglutides and all of that. So they actually work with a lot of celebrities. And the only way that I even got involved with it was because I met her through these, like, what felt like a series of unrelated events. And ultimately, I understand now that it was to get me to this point, to share this story that I've always known I was going to share. And my plight as being fat and having these sex and love issues were ultimately turning this story into something really powerful that's helping a lot of people. And it's going to just continue to help a lot of people. This is my soul's purpose on this planet. Like, I was on a podcast a month or two ago, and there was another guest on there that I was co-hosting with the person. The person was saying how she was bullied in school. And I was like, I was bullied too. And the host was like, how did you deal with that? How did you deal with that? And they went to me, and I was like, well, it wasn't my biggest problem at the time, honestly. Like, I was being bullied in school when I changed schools. It's very normal. I was in 5th grade. It never happened again. But I had rocks thrown at me. But guess what? At that same time, I was breaking up fights between my adult parents. Like, my dad made my mom get an abortion when I was like 7 because he said he was going to kill himself if my mom had a 3rd child. And they fought about that for the rest of my life. And my mom would, and I didn't know what was, like, I didn't know that specifically, but I knew, like, all I would hear was, you don't know what he made me do. You don't know what he made me do. And I would hear that echoing in my head. And I remember thinking while that was going on, looking outside my window, like, I'm going to do something with this one day and really help a lot of people. And I didn't know just how crazy it was all going to get. I haven't even told you the interesting parts.
Let's get to the interesting part.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many interesting parts of this, but it's just being heard, being seen, being felt, and being supported changes everything. And when I started EMDR therapy, my therapist, one of the first things she said to me was, what fires wires? Because I was like, I don't get it. I've been in therapy since I was 5. No one saw this. No one saw what was going on. I've had good therapists. I've had bad therapists. And she was like, this.
The neurons fire together. They wire together. Like the Joe just.
Yeah, exactly. Thing. Yeah.
You know who that is?
The thing is, though, is like with my tech background, I was like, that makes sense to me. It's like, I was selling JavaScript tags for like the last 7 years. So I understand that, right? So it's all based on, so like I have a talk track for the ad tech community to talk about how they could understand it. Because it's basically about sets of logic, whether it's in your brain or a technology that's being compounded and repeated and reproduced based on faulty logic. And unless you go in there and fix it, it's always going to be faulty and it's always going to be dysfunctional and it's always going to be not the way that it should be working, whether it's a human body or it's a piece of technology.
Wow. You are truly a unique, beautiful soul. Where are you right now in your life? Like where?
Yeah.
Are you
what am I doing? What
like,
is the Lauren Friedman experience? It's a confusing thing. I know that people are like, what is this? What is this? So, and I appreciate all your kind words. So I realized in June of 23 that I can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. And one of the lessons I learned at my trauma retreat in August of 22 was know when it's time to leave and when it's time to lead. And at that time, when I first heard it, it was actually my mom's birthday, and it was like a really transformative day there for me. I was able to release a lot of things that were really weighing upon me and reframe them and think about them differently, which has been, part of this instrumental and also inspiring what I'm bringing to market. But I realized I was like, this is my time. This is what, like, there's no other time than the present. Let me do this now. Like, I'm not getting younger. My story isn't getting less interesting. And I need to help people with this. So I've been figuring that out, like how I was going to do this. I was going to market with a different brand called I Run a Tight Shipwreck, which I like a play on words. I thought it was funny, but people didn't get it. So now we're calling it the Lauren Friedman Experience. Yeah. And basically I'm creating a community, and it's basically everything that I do as a person naturally, right? I'm really good at the art and science of connection. So whether it's connecting with people, introducing them, building connections with them interpersonally, helping them find, I used to call myself a suited connector, which is a poker term, which helps, connect different cards to make higher quality pairs and I'm forgetting what higher quality, we could cut this part out. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like commanded cards. Whatever. So I did that with actually one of my mentors in my sobriety journey, and I used to travel a lot, and we would call ourselves like a suited connector. We would go around baffling people with brilliance and breaking stereotypes. So I like to introduce people, whether it's personally, professionally, like-minded individuals, to create stronger partnerships. So that's what I'm bringing to the Connected by LFE community. I'm helping people find community, resources, connection, and support, because connection changes everything. Through a community, I'm building out global resources because there's a lot of barriers to entry for finding support. People feel shame. People just don't know where to turn. Like even I couldn't find, even though I was surrounded by therapists, both in my family and also just like family, friends, everybody. I could not find a therapist when I needed it. And I also didn't want to keep telling my story over and over and over again. So eventually I have a HIPAA compliant way that I want to help people transfer records, but we're not there yet. So I'm standing up the Connected by LFE community. I'm building out resources as well as different ways for people to learn. I'm not a coach. I'm not trying to be, but I want to introduce different methodologies of healing. The How Are You Healing Revolution. Not everyone can talk about what they've been through or even recognize it, but we don't have to do that. We could talk about how are you healing and focus on the modalities. And when you are ready, guess what? I have connection, communities, safer spaces, all of these ways for you to help yourself heal and find community and connection. And then the other way I'm doing this is through the Why Go project. And it's connecting through storytelling, because ultimately, maybe someday another human won't feel as alone. That's literally what I want to bring, because I've always felt so alone, and I still feel very alone. Even though if I choose, I could be surrounded by as many people as I want. But I will always feel alone in my struggles until I meet people that are like me. And the more people that I meet like me, it takes the weight off your shoulders. You're like, oh my gosh, all these things I felt were wrong with me, or I was told were wrong with me, or even I've had trouble handwriting and it never affected my schoolwork. So it just slid right under the radar, right? But I can't read my handwriting. And when I met someone at my trauma retreat who also has trouble handwriting, who had a major trauma at 5 years old like me, I was like, all of these things, right? So that was like, I was like, what if, and I have, my doctor also is one of 9 children, and her youngest sibling was only 12 when their father committed suicide, and now he's 15. So between that, and I was helping a few other families navigate some childhood complex trauma things in the family, I couldn't find resources for them. So I was like, I'm going to build this myself. I've been involved in the Pediatric Cancer Foundation for over a decade. So I'm building it and emulating it like that. And that was like when I came back from my trauma retreat, I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm doing it for adults as well as children. And right now we're standing up the community, the resources, as well as after that, I will be focusing on the storytelling.
Well, you could definitely do all those things, because you're like I said earlier, you're a very unique, interesting soul. Did you ever have any issues with substance abuse at all? I mean, I know you said, food was kind of like a weird dynamic in your life with the weight gain and the weight loss so drastically. About anything else, did you ever even dabble, or did it be just too bright to even you knew better?
Well, there's a few things. One, I was the only one that's ever going to save myself. Like, even when my parents were alive, they were really like unhelpful. In fact, my mom was more harmful than helpful when I went to her for help. So I couldn't get help. So I knew that if I ever like got addicted to Coke, my life would be ruined. And the thing is like, I also knew that I would like it too much. I thought that I had an addictive personality like my dad, but as it turns out, when you understand all of this, you really don't have an addictive personality, but you could take on attributes of people in your home. So that kind of kept me away from it, because I didn't want to like it too much. But also, if I'm going to ruin my life, I'm going to do it in way more interesting ways than drugs. So it's not going to be drugs, but what I was addicted to, I know it's true. But what I was addicted to though was I was taking 60 laxatives a night to just get my body to poop. And as it turns out, that's also related to hormone dysregulation and being in prolonged survival modes. And I had to keep upping the ante. I started with 2. That's the thing. Like, when people hear these, like, 9 hours a week, 60 laxatives, starving yourself, I didn't start there. But my body kept building up a tolerance, and I had to keep upping the ante, in all the different ways, and it eventually spun out of control. I'm really grateful. I don't have a colostomy bag. Like, one of the reasons that I know that I'm meant to share this story is like, I could have died a lot of times from all of the ways I destroyed my body. I've also been part of like all of these crazy things that have happened, and I've been safe. And I really believe that I'm being kept safe because of what I'm meant to do with this story and to help others. And like, this is why these things occurred. I never really had a substance abuse, but when I was taking those 60 laxatives a night, like there was a point where I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to stop. And like, I knew I was going to have to. I knew it was going to destroy my lower intestines at some point, but I did it for over 7 years. Like, the fact that like I'm not sick is really a miracle, honestly. But I would cheers my dad because I'm also a sick fuck. And I would cheers my dad and be like, because the way his method of choice was always overdosing on his medicine. And so I'd be like, it's genetic when you could swallow like 30 pills at once, what are the, so I like to have fun with this and joke around, because like, if you can't, then what is the point of it? So, I'm calling myself like an ex-ad techie on a tragically funny trauma-informed mental health mission. And it's just going to be, it's a Lauren Friedman experience. So I'm going to be doing an after dark actually too about sex and love issues, because I used to travel on business and I used to base my travel around sex a lot.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Like, we would go out getting validation from others? Because it
You
doesn't
would
seem
think
like you
so,
need
but
that.
no, it wasn't even validation. So I would plan my business trips around, when I could have sex with different people. Like obviously it didn't start like that, right? It started with business trips. So it started
See
with
what you're
business
saying?
trips.
Yes.
And
Okay.
then, I'm sitting at bars and I'm a woman and then I had lost all this weight. And then it was just all of these things just spiraled out of control. My marriage is failing. All of these things are happening. My family's out of control. So my addiction was sex and love. That's how I took out the most hatred on myself when I thought I was actually doing it to help myself. And so I actually, much like your last guest, also through a journey and series of events, I also have become, celibate. I'm also technically married, but it's like a whole different situation. Oh yeah.
Whoa. Let's back up.
Well,
Celibacy
we
in
don't.
marriage.
Our
Can you
our
explain that a
relationship
little bit?
is a little bit unorthodox at this point. So you'll have to tune into the podcast to hear the full story. But it's
Okay.
definitely something interesting. And he is my best friend. We've been together for almost 20 years. We do eventually have to separate because that situation that's gone on in his family with other things has really like disproportionately impacted me. But he's my best friend. He's also one of my biggest success
Yeah.
stories right now. He started therapy in January and we had been doing couples therapy for years and he just wasn't ready for it. And last December, through a series of events, I was like, hey, you should really get a therapist. And he was like, you know what, Lauren, you've literally thrived so much in therapy that I'm going to. And he was ready. And he has been having the most amount of success. Like I've seen such a difference in him. And like when you talk about like watching someone evolve and change over a period of time, I've known this man, I've been living with him for almost 20 years. And I've seen a marked difference in him in such a short a period of time that I've never seen in the past 20 years. And it's from being able to feel seen, heard, supported, think about things differently, address his own needs differently, and the people around him feel self-respect. Like I just see the way he even like sits and eats and wants to do different things. And to me, that's really, really beautiful. And that's what I want other people to feel as well. I want people to feel less alone and less alone in their struggles, know that there's support.
Therapy is, yeah, it's so huge, isn't it? I mean, I was such a anti-therapy person, for so many years. And then even when I went to therapy, I was so, wasn't want to buy into it because I just thought,
Yeah.
guy just wants my money pretty much. And honestly, he wasn't the best therapist anyways. He was giving me like the most basic, obvious advice, like eat better, sleep more, drink more water, out move more. Like those
And
things,
that's not
yes, those things are
therapy.
super important and everyone should be doing
Yeah.
those. But that's not really therapy. It's not
No.
getting to the crutch of the bit, the foundation of why I am who I am and how can I work upon like my faults and blind spots. Was, I almost felt like I was leading the conversation, asking him almost when it came to like conceptualizing, who I am and diagnosing myself like in front of him and just kind of adhering to what he wanted to hear me say just to kind of get out of the room. That's the thing with therapy. It's like you need to find that person that actually genuinely challenges
Yeah.
you in an authentic way and not just kind of like drags you along and
I
for
think
just for time's sake. That's how did you find the therapist that fit your personality? That's
Yeah, well,
something
that's
I'm
one
really
of the things
interested
that's really hard. But to your point, though, like a lot of people feel that way. They feel like I've had friends that have been in therapy and they're like, it's not working. And the thing is, traditional psychotherapy does not take into account trauma. So when I talk about being in therapy since I was 5 years old, no one was looking at, like, they saw what was going on in my life. Like, we were just getting through the moments. Like, I told my doctor something that my mom made me do as a child that, it was repeated things over and over. And that's ultimately how I was able to connect it to my sex and love issue. It was like, I was like, this is what it is. And this is how I've been, attracted to these types of things. And I wouldn't have
in.
realized this unless I was on my healing trauma journey. So I had originally, I had been working with her for like a few months and we were just trying to get my thyroid regulated. Then we were going to start those Ozempics of the world just because like I had destroyed my metabolism because I had done this over and over from losing and gaining weight and starving myself. I needed something else. And I had always prided myself on doing it naturally. The medicines didn't work for me at first. I actually gained 25 pounds on the Ozempics when I was supposed to be losing weight. And so originally she was like, your receptors are blocked. And she's like, you need to go to trauma therapy. And I'm recommending EMDR. And it's funny because that day I had realized through another series of events, through a Marine at my gym, that I needed to go to trauma therapy too, because he was explaining something that was happening to him or what had happened to him upon returning from war a few times. And I was like, I feel that way right now. So I was about to approach her with this and she approached me with it. And I was obviously very receptive, but I couldn't find the right therapist. And I had texted previous therapists. I'm like, do you have any recommendations? And they were less than helpful. I've also had bad therapists too, by the way. I also had a general mistrust of the therapy community because my parents were therapists. Have you seen Shrinking? Have you seen Shrinking? Jason
It's with
Segel.
what's his name?
Yeah.
Jason Segel
Yeah.
and Harrison
And
Ford,
Brett
right? Yeah.
Goldstein. And so they're focused on a therapist, what happens when a therapist is losing their shit and what type of therapy they're giving to their patient.
That's a
I love
beautiful
it.
premise. Very,
Well, I
very
always wondered
different.
that though.
Yeah.
Like my dad lost his shit, like, and it just never came back when I was in high school. And like, I remember those things happening and I always wondered, I was like, what the F is he telling his clients? Like, this man is giving psychotherapy and he's just unwell. So I was really interested in that. And I feel like I was like, one day I'm going to co-write with them an episode because this is my life. But it was really hard for me to find therapists. So that's one of the reasons why I'm building out this community, because also people want a recommendation. And I can't tell you whether or not it's going to work or if this person is good or not, but I can at least say, hey, this is someone that you could go to. I don't have any guarantees, but it's also like any other relationship. You need to find the right fit. You need to find someone you trust. And you also have to be able to have that open dialogue and say, hey, this isn't working. And I'd like to find someone else, because at the end of the day, your therapist doesn't want you to be wasting time. They don't want to take your money if they're not helping you. Like, that's not helpful to anybody. And, you know, one of those things is it was hard for me to find my resources and what I needed. So I'm helping others, you know, break those barriers to entry so that they can do it. And also just navigating and providing concierge services if people want, or even just brainstorms, because that's what I'm really good at, is helping people get out of sticky situations, whether it has to do with mental health or not. Like, just like in life, like I'm really good at connecting people. I've always been helping people find jobs, find different ways to solve for problems. That's just who I am. So that's what I'm bringing to this. But also navigating insurance is really hard. And a lot of mental health isn't covered by insurance. And so when you eventually, like when you're able to find certain providers or help people just navigate it, then they're like, okay, great. Like, let me try this, because everybody can benefit from therapy. And therapy isn't a panacea. Like, there's so many other components of healing. It's not one thing. It's literally everything, which is why I'm calling it How Are You Healing? Because it's all the different modalities that, you know, some may work for you better than for me and vice versa. And you just have to keep trying different things and it's really an art and a science, you know, of healing. And it's a delicate balance. So that's what I also want to help people do. Eventually, I'm going to be having healing expos. I'm going to be having all these workshops online as well as in person with all the different providers, and I'm building out these communities. They'll also be on my podcast. So it's a whole thing, basically like a whole enterprise, interrelated network of support to help people feel less alone. And one of the things that when I first realized that my issue was sex and love through a karmic lesson, and that's a story for another day as well. But when I realized that, I actually went to, because I've been to AA meetings, I've been to 12-step meetings, I've been to OA meetings, and they never really resonated with me. And I recognize that they really help a lot of people. Like I said, my mentor is like an AA guy, and like he swears by it. And I think for a lot of people, it's amazing. There's healing in community, and I think you should do whatever works for you. But for me, for sex and love, it wasn't helpful when the first thing that they said during the first meeting was literally, they're like, we're not like the other 12-step programs. They're like, we don't like to talk about this publicly. We don't want to be known publicly. And I'm like, that just adds another layer of shame to this. And for me, it's supposed to be removing the shame. I also am calling it, let that shit go, the weight of shame, because that weight of shame lives in you and it literally physically manifests in you. Like I could literally show you what I looked like when I was full of shame. And when I was full of shame, I literally treated myself like I hated myself. And now I just treat myself in ways that are loving, and they're really hard sometimes. Like I could sit in a bar. I have alcohol right like in my apartment because I used to have like a lot. I like to entertain, and I now either give it to people or use it for other events, but I'm trying to get rid of it. But I have alcohol that doesn't bother me at all. Like alcohol really is like, it was just the conduit for me making really poor decisions. And also now when I meet people, guess what? I'm a polarizing person. Not everyone loves me. A lot of people do, but some people don't. And guess what? You could hate me for who I am, but don't hate me for my alcoholism, you know?
I could see why people would be intimidated by your intellect in the way that your processing speed is just from the spectrum of most people. I feel like you're on a very higher level of the relation as a metaphor towards like
the
personality.
rainbow child, after all. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
you are, yeah, you are. Lauren,
We
I think I
should.
could
We should
talk to
do
you
this
for 3
again.
days straight. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Lauren, where can people
Yeah,
find you? I mean, it looks like you have a lot. You have a lot. You have many different areas that
that's
you
true.
can be
So
located at.
I'm centralizing it right now. It's going to be called the-lfe.com. That's going to be launching in a few weeks. It's going to where everything's going to live. You could sign up for my community, for my newsletter, which will be launching soon. You could find my YouTube channels, all the different things I'm working on. But right now, just the _LF experience at Instagram, as well as the-LFE on YouTube. So that's going to be coming soon, but I'm just really excited to continue to see your journey and all the goodness that you're bringing to this world because everybody needs this. And the more people start talking about these things, the less alone people feel. That's why I love collaborating with people like you who have been through real shit and have been able to find their power, and their purpose in all of their pain.
That's beautifully said, and thank you for saying that too. Well, Lauren, this has been a privilege speaking with you, and
We
I feel like we're
are.
going to be good
I couldn't
friends.
agree more.
Really do. I find you
I
fascinating,
find you
and
fascinating.
find you, in comparison
I
to
think
you, trust me, I am not. Thank you again, Lauren, for coming on the show. And everyone out there, I really hope you appreciated this episode as much as I did. I'm going to have to go back and listen to everything you just said again because there was so many things that I really want to delve deep back into.
would love to do
And when we
that with
talk
you.
again,
We
so
should
that
we
I
should just
know
start
that
our own
we'll,
podcast. Let's talk
we
about it
really should.
offline
We
for
really
real.
should, yeah. So, okay, for real. All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching and be on the lookout for
Sounds
another
good. Thank
episode
you
very
so
soon.
much.
Take care, everybody.